They thought I was finished, that they could take everything, my home, my future, my trust, and I'd just disappear. But I didn't vanish. I watched, I waited, and now they're about to lose everything they built on the ashes of my life. Before we begin, take a second to hit subscribe if you've ever given your all to someone, and they betrayed you anyway. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. This story is going to hit harder than most. Miami glittered far below, a shattered mirror reflecting the black expanse of Biscayne Bay. The air, a heavy blanket of humidity laced with brine and exhaust fumes, did little to soothe the rasp in my throat. Dom Perignon, Tanya's weakness. Tonight, it tasted like regret. I lifted the glass, the effervescence dancing against my upper lip, and saluted the glittering skyline. To reinvention, I breathed, the breeze snatching the words from my lips as it buffeted the rooftop of my Brickell penthouse, a prize they assumed was theirs for the taking. 2 years. 2 years since that devastating discovery. Tanya, eyes filled with stricken guilt. Devon, sputtering apologies that reeked of rehearsal. They'd imagined me erased, painted over on the canvas of their carefully constructed lives. A grave miscalculation. I recalled the gut-wrenching wave of nausea, the incandescent rage that threatened to engulf me. I remembered the hasty packing, abandoning all I had labored to achieve, everything I had suffered to obtain. The apartment, the car, even the damn golden retriever they'd wheedled me into adopting. A complete severance. Let them choke on the spoils. Tallahassee felt like another lifetime. A green kid, fresh out of service, meeting Tanya in a Pensacola dive. Her smile, the way she looked at me, I was ensnared. A youthful marriage, a move to Miami on a whim, fueled by aspirations as boundless as the cityscape. I toiled on the night shift at the docks, unloading freighters under the unforgiving Florida sun. I liquidated my beloved Mustang to finance her education. Every sleepless night, every sacrificed weekend, every deprivation was for her future, for our future. Devon, my so-called childhood confidant, became a constant shadow, always present to assist Tanya during my absences. I was too naive, too trusting to detect the poison simmering beneath his charming exterior. I relinquished my own ease so she could pursue her ambitions. I erected the foundation brick by painstaking brick, only for them to waltz in and claim the edifice as their own. The warnings, they were screaming in my face like blaring sirens. Tanya growing detached, her phone conversations hushed and furtive. Devon appearing at our doorstep unannounced, always with some flimsy pretext. The night of her birthday. I had orchestrated a surprise dinner, a romantic escapade at a restaurant she'd coveted for months. She was a no-show. Later, I saw the pictures splashed across social media, laughing and dancing with Devon at some chic South Beach haunt. They presumed I was shattered, vanquished. They were convinced of their victory. I permitted them to believe their delusion. I finished the champagne, the acrid aftertaste coating my palate. The city lights winked knowingly, indifferent to the tempest raging inside. I had rebuilt everything. I had eclipsed them. I had become everything they ever yearned to be, everything they coveted, independently. I had transmuted their treachery into a weapon honed to a lethal sharpness. They may have won a skirmish, but the final act was mine. Pensacola dreams. Pensacola smelled of salt and diesel, a familiar comfort after years at sea. The sun bled orange over the Gulf as I walked along the pier, the rhythmic creak of the wooden planks a soundtrack to my newfound civilian life, discharged, adrift, but breathing free. That's when I saw her. Tanya, leaning against the railing, a splash of crimson against the fading light. Her dark hair cascaded down her shoulders, catching the sea breeze like a sail. She was laughing, a melodic sound that cut through the noise of the harbor. I don't know what compelled me, maybe the loneliness finally cracking, but I walked over. "Beautiful sunset," I said, the line feeling clumsy even to my own ears. She turned, her eyes the color of dark chocolate, and smiled. "It is. Makes you forget about everything else, even for a little while." We talked for hours that night, sharing dreams over cheap beer at a dive bar a few blocks from the beach. I told her about the Navy, the endless ocean, the sense of duty. She spoke of Miami, of becoming a nurse, of helping people. She wanted to make a difference, she said, her voice full of conviction. The next few months were a whirlwind. Dinners at sunset, long walks on the beach, whispered secrets under a canopy of stars. We were young, fueled by hope and naivete. I fell hard and fast. She said she loved me too, her eyes shining with what I believed was genuine affection. One evening, sitting on the porch of my small apartment, overlooking the bay, she brought up Miami again. "Pensacola is nice, Marcus," she said, tracing circles on my hand. "But it's not us. It's not big enough for what we want." I knew she was right. I wanted a future with her, a real life. "What do you need?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Nursing school," she replied, her voice soft. "It's expensive. And Miami, rent, is crazy." I'd saved a little from my time in the service, enough for a down payment on a small house, maybe. But her dreams felt more important. "We'll figure it out," I promised, squeezing her hand. "We'll move to Miami." The reality of that promise hit hard. Miami was a different beast altogether. I took a night shift as a security guard, anything to keep the bills paid. I sold my car, a beat-up Mustang I'd been restoring, to help with tuition. Tanya, focused on her studies, seemed to drift further away. Then there was Devin, my best friend from back home, always around, offering Tanya rides to school, fixing things around the apartment. He'd moved down a few months after us, said he missed me. I was grateful, I thought. Someone to watch out for when I was working. "He's a good guy, Marcus," Tanya would say, her voice tinged with annoyance when I occasionally expressed my unease. "Don't be so insecure." But the unease lingered, a persistent hum beneath the surface of my life. I dismissed it. I trusted them, both of them. Blind faith, born from a love that had blinded me. Miami's embrace. The humid Miami air slammed into us like a damp towel, leaving behind the long-leaf pines of Tallahassee for a landscape of concrete and swaying fronds, sparked a mix of freedom and trepidation. Tanya, her dark hair a polished cascade, exited the bus and inhaled deeply, a joyful grin illuminating her features. "This is it, Marcus. Our new beginning." Our fresh start translated to a cramped apartment in Little Havana, where the scent of robust coffee mingled with acrid vehicle fumes. It meant relinquishing my reliable pickup for public transit. It meant a steady diet of instant noodles. But Tanya, she positively radiated. Enrolled at Jackson Memorial's nursing program, she flourished under the rigorous curriculum. Her enthusiastic discussions of the human body both fascinated and slightly overwhelmed me. To keep us afloat, I accepted a night security position at a Bayside condominium. 12-hour shifts spent observing shadows pirouette across meticulously kept lawns. The city's thrum, a constant companion. Sleep became a precious, elusive commodity. By day, I combed through online classifieds for piecemeal work, anything to supplement our threadbare savings. Even Grandpa's timepiece went, a heartbreaking decision I concealed from Tanya. My car followed. "It's only for now," I assured her, summoning a smile as I signed the paperwork. "Once you're employed, we'll upgrade." She squeezed my hand, her eyes sparkling with appreciation. "You're amazing, Marcus." A few months later, Devin, my closest confidant since childhood, migrated south. He professed to miss us, though I suspected the city's vibrant pulse was the real draw. He became a fixture at our apartment, invariably present at supper time, readily assisting Tanya with her studies. I valued his companionship, the laughter that brightened our tight quarters, but a certain disquiet flickered in his gaze, something I couldn't quite place. Tanya remained engrossed in her textbooks, meticulously highlighting key points. The apartment transformed into a flurry of index cards and medical jargon. "I'm going to be the most remarkable nurse this city has ever known, Marcus," she proclaimed one evening, her voice brimming with unwavering resolve. Her birthday dawned, a stifling July Saturday. I'd scraped together enough for a celebratory dinner at a downtown Cuban establishment. But Tanya harbored other ideas. "Some classmates are throwing a party," she murmured. "I really need to attend, Marcus. It's vital for career connections." Disappointment pricked, but I suppressed it. "Of course," I replied, manufacturing another smile. "Enjoy yourself." Later that night, restless and unable to find sleep, I idled past the address she'd provided. Music reverberated from the wide-open windows of a waterfront estate. High-end automobiles crowded the street. I spotted her then, poised on the balcony, laughing, a flute of champagne in her grasp. Devon stood close by, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. The moonlight caught a telltale shine, something very much like my grandfather's watch adorning his wrist. The third wheel. Devon arrived like a hurricane wrapped in a tailored suit. One minute, it was just Tanya and me, navigating the humid Miami nights, and the next, Devon was there, a permanent fixture. He'd sauntered into our lives at a gallery opening in Wynwood, all teeth and easy charm, like he already belonged. Tanya had known him from some charity event, a connection forged in the shallow waters of high society. "Marcus, you absolutely have to meet Devon," Tanya had trilled, her voice a few octaves higher than usual, pulling me towards a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Devon, with his slicked-back hair and eyes that crinkled when he smiled, exuded an effortless confidence that both intrigued and irritated me. He clapped me on the shoulder, a little too hard, a little too familiar. "Marcus, man, Tanya's told me so much about you. You're the brains behind the operation," she says. The operation being Tanya's burgeoning social life, funded by my late nights crunching numbers. I managed a tight smile. Glad to be of service. That was the start of it. Dinners went from intimate affairs at our cramped apartment to awkward triangles at expensive restaurants in South Beach. Devon always picked the place, always ordered the wine, always dominated the conversation with stories of his latest conquest or extravagant purchase. Tanya would hang on his every word, her laughter tinkling like wind chimes. I'd sit there, nursing a beer, feeling like a ghost in my own life. One particular evening stands out, a culinary disaster at some celebrity chef's new venture. The plates were minimalist sculptures, the portions laughably small, and the prices astronomical. I remember staring at a single seared scallop, wondering if I could stretch it into a second bite. Devon, oblivious, was regaling Tanya with a tale about a yacht race he'd almost won. Tanya, wide-eyed, leaned closer, her perfume a cloying assault on my senses. "You should have seen it, Tanya," Devon boomed. The spray, the sun, the sheer exhilaration of it all. He gestured wildly, nearly knocking over a glass of water. "Next time, you have to come." Tanya's eyes sparkled. "Oh, Devon, I would love that." I cleared my throat. "We have that camping trip planned for next month, remember?" The sparkle faded from Tanya's eyes. "Oh, right. The camping trip. Well, maybe we can do both." The steak I'd scrimped and saved for tasted like ash in my mouth. The air in the restaurant thrummed with a silent tension, a current only I seemed to feel. It was more than just awkward. It was off. Devon's hand lingered a fraction too long on Tanya's arm when he laughed. Tanya's gaze flickered to him a beat too often. And me? I was the goddamn third wheel, watching my life unravel one excruciating meal at a time. The waiter came by, asking if everything was okay. I said yes. Cracks in the facade. The champagne stung, acrid on my tongue. Down below, Brickell was a constellation of ambition, each light a whispered temptation reflected in the beige ink. 2 years prior, a different rooftop, the same cloying Miami humidity, the same suffocating feeling of watching everything I'd built dissolve. That was the day I found them. They thought they'd erased me, scrubbed me out of the picture, free to erect their paradise on my foundation. They were wrong. I resurrected everything they craved: the views, the pedigree, the invulnerable facade. Without them, each deliberate step fueled by a cold, unwavering rage. They might have thought they won, but I controlled the finale. It began simply enough. Tanya, with that radiant smile and ambitions that mirrored the vastness of the Florida sky. I met her in Pensacola, just a Navy kid steeped in salt water in JP5. She was a nursing student, her face alight with promise and the reflected glow of medical texts. We married young, buoyed by the blind faith of youth, the kind that shatters against the rocks of reality. Miami was her promised land, a metropolis of shimmering glass and endless horizons. I followed, trading my uniform for coveralls, losing myself in the grit and grease of a mechanic's garage. I surrendered my vintage Mustang, my teenage pride, so she could cover tuition and clinical fees. Every concession felt like an investment, a stake in our shared destiny. Then, Devon appeared. My brother in arms since basic, a privileged charmer with a bottomless craving for attention. He gravitated toward Tanya, a constant presence, offering rides in his ostentatious sports car, filling every room with his booming laugh. Initially, I appreciated it. Company for Tanya during my relentless shifts, someone to alleviate the pressure. But then, the almost imperceptible shifts. The way her gaze lingered on Devon, a heartbeat too long. The flimsy excuses for late nights at the hospital. The subtle recoil when I touched her, as if my working man's hands had suddenly become repugnant. One Saturday, I returned home early, intending to surprise her with lilies. The apartment was unnervingly quiet, thick with attention I couldn't quite name. She claimed to be studying, but the books remained untouched on the table. She'd been out, she explained later, grabbing a coffee with a classmate. That very night was her birthday. I'd reserved a table at a chic restaurant overlooking South Beach, somewhere she'd been longing to experience. She forced a smile, toyed with her lobster risotto, and spent the majority of the evening glued to her phone. Around 10, she declared fatigue and a desire to go home. I drove her back to the apartment, anticipating something. Gratitude, a fleeting kiss, anything. Instead, she offered a mumbled farewell and vanished inside. I remained in the car, the relentless ocean, a discordant, unsettling pulse. Later, the evidence appeared on Instagram. Tanya, carefree, draped across Devon's shoulders at some rooftop gathering in Wynwood. Champagne bubbles, flashing lights, and the unmistakable glint of betrayal mirrored in her eyes. I sacrificed my comfort for her aspirations. I offered them both my unwavering trust, and they repaid me with treachery. Birthday betrayal. The humid Miami air clung to me like a second skin as I meticulously arranged the orchids on the rooftop terrace. 52 of them, Tanya's age in years. Each bloom a testament to another orbit around the sun, another year I thought we'd share. I'd spent weeks planning this, coordinating with the building management to secure the space, ordering her favorite champagne, a crisp Veuve Clicquot. The city glittered below, a sprawling canvas of light reflecting the anticipation in my chest. At precisely 7:00 p.m., my phone buzzed. Tanya's text. "Babe, so sorry. Got called in for an emergency surgery. Can't make dinner. Rain check? Rain check." The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I stared at the orchids, their vibrant colors now seeming garish, mocking. I knew, I'd known for weeks, the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the hushed phone calls, the way she avoided my gaze. But I'd chosen to ignore it, clinging to the hope that my love, my sacrifices, were enough. Apparently, they weren't. I tossed the champagne bottle into the recycling bin with more force than necessary. The shattering echo seemed to mirror the fracturing inside me. Grabbing my keys, I drove, not knowing where, just needing to move to escape the suffocating feeling of betrayal. The throbbing bass led me to the SLS Hotel in South Beach. I hadn't intended to go inside, but the music pulled me in like a riptide. The party was in full swing, a cacophony of laughter, clinking glasses, and pulsating beats. And then I saw her. Tanya, radiant in a shimmering silver dress, her arm looped through Devin's. He was laughing, throwing his head back in that arrogant way he had, the way I used to find endearing. They were surrounded by a throng of admirers, all vying for their attention. Their eyes met mine across the crowded room. Tanya's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then hardened into a defiant smirk. Devin simply raised his glass in a mock toast, his eyes glinting with smug satisfaction. The understanding passed between them, a silent communication that excluded me, erased me. The scene swam before my eyes, the lights blurring, the music fading into a dull roar. I turned and walked away, the weight of their betrayal settling on my shoulders like a physical burden. The air, once filled with the scent of orchids and champagne, now reeked of deceit. That night, standing alone on the beach, the waves crashing against the shore like a relentless drumbeat, I made a vow. They had won tonight, stolen my happiness, shattered my trust, but they wouldn't win in the end. I would rebuild, stronger, more resilient, fueled by the fire of their betrayal. This wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning of theirs, shattered. Miami's humid grip tightened, a pre-storm weight in the air. 4 years beneath this sky, and still, the atmosphere felt like a shroud. My footsteps tapped a lonely rhythm in the hallway. The budget apartment, a far cry from Tanya's aspirations. I'd arrived early, lilies clutched in hand, a surprise of her favored blooms. The door yielded without a fight. A soft, broken sound, a moan, a gasp, filtered from the bedroom. My pulse stuttered. I pushed the door inward. The scene unfolded like a lurid painting under the harsh glare of the bedside lamp. Tanya, skin flushed, entangled in rumpled sheets. Devin, eyes wide with naked horror, fumbling for cover. The air vibrated with their guilt, a palpable tension that stung my nostrils. The lilies tumbled from nerveless fingers, scattered petals like fallen wishes. Marcus, Tanya's voice, a constricted rasp. Devin remained mute, his customary swagger vanished, replaced by pathetic fear. How long has this been going on? The question tore from my throat, ragged and raw. Her silence provided the damning answer. Devin shuffled, attempting eye contact, but I refused him. I simply couldn't. I trusted you both implicitly, I choked out, the words bitter on my tongue. I gave up everything. Marcus, please, just let me explain, Tanya begged, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. Explain what, exactly? The countless double shifts, the shelved dreams, all so she could chase this life? The endless hours Devin had spent in our cramped space, sharing dinners, jokes, my confidences? I shook my head, a solitary tear escaping. There's nothing left to explain. Turning, I retreated, the image branding itself onto my memory, a permanent scar. The abandoned lilies perfumed the air with a now sickening sweetness, a memento of lost faith. The deluge began the moment I hit the street, the downpour mirroring the tempest within. I wandered aimlessly, the glittering lights of South Beach blurring into a kaleidoscope of agony. The beach became my destination, waves assaulting the shore with an unyielding rhythm of destruction and renewal. I sat there, exposed to the elements, rain plastering my hair to my face, wind biting at my skin. Grief was a brutal weight, a crushing pressure in my chest. It felt as though a piece of my soul had withered and died, the trusting, generous part that believed in fidelity and devotion. Anger followed, a slow-burning ember beneath the ashes of despair. It was a deliberate, ice-cold fury, a resolve to resurrect myself, to ascend from the wreckage. They assumed they had triumphed. They were mistaken. They had merely unleashed a force they couldn't possibly imagine, I stood alone, utterly isolated. Yet in that solitude, defiance began to bloom. I would not be defined by their treachery. I would evolve into something stronger, something superior. I would rebuild painstakingly until I had sculpted a life that eclipsed their wildest desires, and they would be forced to observe from the periphery, consumed by envy and remorse. The storm continued its assault, but within me, a different tempest gathered, a tempest of quiet determination, righteous fury, poetic justice waiting to be exacted, the silent rebuild. The city tasted like regret. Flat champagne did little to scour the acrid sensation from my tongue. From my perch atop the Brickell penthouse, the glittering cityscape offered only a cheap imitation of starlight. 2 years. 70-odd weeks since that tableau of Tanya and Devon, their faces contorted by a blend of desire and shame, burned itself onto my retinas. 2 years since their clumsy attempt to write me out of the script, to relegate me to the footnotes of their meticulously crafted lives, and for a time, I nearly obliged. Days blurred, each a stifling reminder of my gullibility. The impulse to bolt, to dissolve back into the obscurity of Tallahassee, gnawed relentlessly. Sell everything, vanish, and let the oppressive humidity of South Florida absorb my bitterness. But retreat felt like conceding defeat, handing them another undeserved prize. Tanya, with her Machiavellian schemes, and Devon, with his honeyed deceit, would have prevailed. They'd secure their fairy tale ending, erected on the ruins of my shattered faith, so I dug in. I stayed, nurturing the fury, a slow-burning ember that cauterized the gaping chasm in my soul. It wasn't affection I harbored, nor even pure animosity. It was something colder, more calculated, a steadfast resolve to rebuild everything they had attempted to dismantle and ultimately to eclipse it. The initial step proved the most arduous. I liquidated the condo, the shared space where I had invested my life savings, where echoes of her laughter and his disarming grins still lingered. It felt like a self-inflicted amputation, yet a necessary one. I required capital and distance. I relocated to a cramped downtown studio, a sterile cube devoid of personality. It became my sanctuary, a war room for planning. I consumed real estate literature, dissected market intricacies, and spent countless hours networking at industry gatherings, my anguish concealed beneath a veneer of professional composure. A long-dormant military discipline reasserted itself. I rose before dawn, subjected myself to grueling workouts, and labored until my vision blurred. Sleep transformed into a luxury, an unwelcome interruption to the mission I had embraced. My maiden venture was modest, a dilapidated property in Little Havana. I flipped it rapidly, channeling the earnings back into the venture, then another and another. Each incremental triumph became a subtle strike against them, a brick in the fortress of my burgeoning silent power. I honed my ability to decipher motivations, to foresee desires, to exploit vulnerabilities. The naive, trusting individual whom Tanya and Devon had manipulated with such ease ceased to exist. His replacement was sharper, more formidable. They presumed they had triumphed. They assumed they had confined me to history. They erred. They may have won a skirmish, a transient moment of glory, but I controlled the finale. The skyline shimmered in my champagne flute. I sipped the drink. A slow, gratifying smile touched my lips. The taste was victory, poetic justice. The humid Miami air clung to me like a second skin as I stood on the rooftop of my Brickell penthouse, the city lights a glittering tapestry below. Champagne fizzed in my glass, but the taste was secondary to the panorama unfolding before me, a drama I had meticulously orchestrated. 2 years. 2 years since I walked in on Tanya and Devon. Their betrayal, a brand seared into my soul. They thought they'd erased me, a minor inconvenience on their path to success. But I rebuilt everything they ever wanted without them. My story with Tanya began far from this gleaming metropolis, in the sleepy panhandle town of Pensacola. I was a young, fresh-faced Navy vet. She, a whirlwind of ambition with eyes that promised a world I desperately wanted to be a part of. We married young, drawn together by a youthful idealism that felt invincible. Then came Miami, Tanya's dream, a city that shimmered with possibility. I worked graveyard shifts, swallowed my pride, and even sold my beloved '67 Mustang to put her through nursing school. Every sacrifice felt worthwhile, a stepping stone to our shared future. Devin, my best friend since childhood, became a fixture in our lives, a constant third wheel. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle shifts in their behavior, glances exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. But I was blinded by trust, by the naive belief in the sanctity of our bond. I gave up my comfort so she could chase her dreams. The cracks started to appear subtly, almost imperceptibly. Tanya grew distant, her once eager affection replaced by a preoccupied air. Devin, always charismatic, seemed to materialize at our apartment at increasingly odd hours, a convenient shoulder for Tanya to lean on, or so I thought. Then came her birthday, a milestone I'd planned for weeks. I booked a romantic dinner at a waterfront restaurant, envisioning a night of reconnection. She canceled at the last minute, claiming a mandatory training session at the hospital. Later that night, a friend sent me a blurry photo. Tanya, laughing and dancing at a South Beach club, Devin's hand possessively on her back. The realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave. That was the turning point. The naive, trusting Marcus Hayes died that night. In his place rose a man driven by a singular purpose: justice. I channeled my rage, my pain, into a laser-like focus. I liquidated our assets, the few we had, and invested in distressed properties, foreclosures on the verge of collapse. I learned the language of finance, the ruthless dance of acquisition and leverage. I devoured business books late into the night, transforming myself into a force to be reckoned with. My first target was the medical practice where Tanya worked, the prestigious clinic she'd clawed her way into. I acquired the building it was housed in, then subtly, relentlessly, began to raise the rent, enforcing obscure clauses in the lease. The clinic buckled under the pressure, eventually relocating to a less desirable location, tarnishing Tanya's reputation. She lost her coveted position, her social standing diminished. Devin, meanwhile, had invested heavily in a chain of nightclubs, fueled by Tanya's connections and a hefty loan from a shady offshore account. I quietly bought up the debt, then called it in without warning. His empire crumbled overnight, his lavish lifestyle evaporating as quickly as it had materialized. The headlines screamed of mismanagement and fraud, his name dragged through the mud. Now, as I watched the distant flicker of sirens near Devin's former nightclub, I felt a cold satisfaction wash over me. Tanya and Devin had won the initial battle, their treachery leaving me broken and humiliated. But I owned the ending. So tell me, if the people you trusted most betrayed you, would you walk away or build a life so powerful they'd have no choice but to watch from the sidelines? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this speak to you, hit subscribe, because this is just one of many they hoped you'd never hear.